All right, so in this part, we're going to continue discussing the ANet fluency reading, ANet reading fluency materials. In particular, we're going to look at continue talking about how to complete the scoring documents. So we started that process in part 2. So in part 3, we're going to complete the process on how to complete the scoring documents and then access in the Google form to input the student data. All right, so let's go back to the form where the teacher is inputting information. So let me remind you real quick where to get this. So you're going to go to My ANet. You're going to click on Dashboard, and right here where it says Manage Assessments, you're going to go to, and it goes default to ELA. You're going to go here to the part where it says Reading Fluency Diagnostic, and then you're going to click on Materials for Assessment 5. So Assessment 5 is the diagnostic, the reading fluency, and then you're going to click on the scoring sheet. All right, so when you click on the scoring sheet, it downloads it, the bottom left, you open it up, and then there's the information. So remember, teachers have access to this as well. All right, so there's going to be the text, the administration directions, and then the text in the scoring form. So when you click on the text in the scoring form, this is the text that you see here, or similar to it. All right, so you have the student name, the class, and the date. So make sure you include the student name, and for class, it's important you include the grade level, because nowhere on here, when you print it out, does it indicate the grade level. So it's important that the grade level is indicated, and then I would also use the teacher's name of the student, and then the date. All right, so for each student, and this was mentioned in the previous video, for each student, this was mentioned in part 2, for each student, you need to make a copy of this for each student and give to the teacher or the person doing the assessing. So you're going to print for each student, you're going to print the text and the scoring form for the teacher. So you're going to print this page, and then you're going to print the comprehension part, which we talked about last time. Then you're going to print the Acumenticity part, the Porosity part, and the overall fluency rating. Now, for grades 4 through 8, as was mentioned in part 2, for overall fluency rating for grades 4 through 8, you will do. For high school, you will not determine fluency rating, so this page is not printed for grades 9 and 10. So for grades 9 and 10, you're going to stop at Porosity Scoring. You do not print this next page. Okay? All right, so what happens then is this. So let's talk about each part. So this part was discussed last time. So in the process of the student reading the passage, each time a mistake is made on a word, you're going to strike through. If the student corrects himself or herself, you're going to put a C above it. So that's considered correct. So that was discussed in part 2. All right, now, you see where it says 120 seconds? All right, so that's let me kind of go back to the directions part. So let me remind you about the directions part. All right, so right here where it says at exactly 2 minutes, stop the timer and make a note on the text where the student was when the time ended. If the student finishes before 2 minutes, note at the end of the text the time at which the student finished, such as 107 seconds or 1 minute 47 seconds if the student finished in 1 minute and 47 seconds. Now, on the Google form, you're going to input the number of seconds. So you're not going to say 1 minute 47 seconds on the Google form. You're going to say 107. All right, so just keep that in mind. So then what you see here is this. All right, so let's talk about these two examples. All right, so the first example is on student A. So in student A, the student reads, and at the end of 2 minutes, 120 seconds, see 120 seconds? At the end of 2 minutes, this is where the student stopped. So the teacher said 2 minutes is up, stop. All right. So at the end of 2 minutes, the student stopped at the word provided. So indicate the end with a bracket. Indicate the end with a bracket. So this bracket indicates that this is where the student stopped. And then indicate the time. So this is where the student stopped, and then this was the number of seconds that it took the student to get to where they stopped. So they stopped at exactly 2 minutes, so 120 seconds. Okay, let's look at the other example. So the other example, which is student B, notice the class name, so grade 7, so whatever grade level, make sure you indicate the grade level, and also indicate the teacher of that student. And then the date that the assessment occurred. All right, so notice that this student actually read all the way to the end. So read all the passage, and it took that student 100 seconds. So 1 minute, 40 seconds. So it took the student 100 seconds. Notice, even though it's at the end, go ahead and put a bracket at the end of the word, the last word the student read. Okay? All right, so 100 seconds, 1 minute, 40 seconds, it took the student to read the whole passage. Again, notice each of those strikes. So each strike right here, each strike represents an error. The strike with the C above it indicates that the student made the correction, so that's considered a correct word. All right. Okay, so now let's go to, okay, we talked about comprehension last time, so we talked about how what to put here. Now let's talk about Acumenticity. All right, so Acumenticity. Acumenticity is the words, the number of words read correctly per minute. Acumenticity is the number of words read correctly per minute. All right, so notice the first line here says total words read, and then I have a 340. So let me show you where that 340 comes from. So number of words read. So the number of words read comes from this. So remember, this student read the whole thing, right? So the student read all of the passage. So notice right here, see where it says 340? So 340 indicates that that is the number of words from beginning to the end of this sentence. So see where it says 323? So 323 is the number of words read all the way to the end of that sentence, and so on. All right, so that's where that 340 comes from. And let's go back. Then the next part, to determine Acumenticity, you need to then determine the number of words read incorrectly. So I have a 7 here. So let's see where that 7 comes from. So the number of incorrect words. So I'm scrolling back up. And so any word that has a line through it is an incorrect word. So you have to count those. If it's a C, remember C is not incorrect. C is correct. So the student made a correction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, so 7 words. So let's go back down, and so that's where you see the 7. So now the number of words read correctly is the number of words read subtract the number of words read incorrectly. So that's where you get 333. So 340 subtract 7 is 333. Now you can determine the Acumenticity. So remember, Acumenticity is the number of words read correctly per minute. So to do that, you're going to take the words read correctly, so 333, divided by the number of seconds of reading. So remember, it took the student, let me remind you, took the student 100 seconds to get to that word. So that's where you see that 100 seconds here. But remember, we want to determine the per minute. So you kind of convert this back to minutes. So that's why you multiply by 60. All right, so 60. So you're going to say 333, the number of words read correctly, divided by the number of seconds of the reading. and then multiply that by 60. When you do that, 333 divided by 100 times 60 is actually 199.8. But let's go ahead and round down. All right, so let's go ahead and round down with this. Don't round off, round down. So just use 199. So instead of using rounding off 200, use 199. Always round down. Okay, so that's how you can determine the number of words read per minute. Okay, let's go through the other example and do the same thing. So in the other example, we have this student read 174 words. Let's see how that was determined. Okay, so remember, this is where the student stopped, right? Right here, the word provided. Now notice there's an extra word here the student get to, and that's the last word of the sentence. So if the student had read the whole sentence, that would be 175. So 175 minus this one word is 174. So that's where 174 comes in. Now don't forget about 120. That's going to be needed in a little while. So the 120 seconds. All right, so let's go back. All right, so number of words read is 174. The number of words read incorrectly is 10. So you know how to find that. You go back and you count how many slash marks there were. Remember, if there's a C above it, that's counted correctly. That's counted as a correct word. So 174 minus 10 is 164. So let's determine the Accumenticity. So the Accumenticity is the words read correctly divided by the number of seconds of reading, which in this case was a full 2 minutes, 120 seconds. And then we got to convert that to minutes, so we're going to multiply by 60, and then you get 82. So when you do 164 divided by 120 times 60, you get exactly 82. Okay, now, you all remember grades 4 through 8 have to determine the percentile range. So right here, there's a link to get to that table. So let me kind of show you how to get to this. So to get to that, you're going to go back to the material part. Let me see if it's, yeah, so the material part, see where it says Acumenticity? And then there's a hyperlink here. When I click on that hyperlink, you get this table. All right, so let me remind you. So you see where it says fall, winter, spring? So words correct per minute, words correct per minute, so on. So fall, winter, spring. The fall is the one we're using right now. So that's that first fluency diagnostic. All right, so you're going to use the fall column. Remember, this was grade 7 passage. So I'm going to grade 7. I go to grade 7, which is here. Okay, so here's grade 7, and then this column is the percentile range column, and then this is the Accumenticity column. So for example, see where it says 82 right here, and I have the student percentile range between 10th and 25th percentile. Let's see where I got that from. All right, so let's start at the top. See where it says 180? So 180 or above will be 90 percentile or above. 156 to 179, the percentile range will be 75th to 90th. 128 to 155, the percentile range will be 50 to 75. 102 to 127, percentile range will be 25th to 50th. 79 to 101, percentile range will be 10th to 25th percentile. And anything below 79 for grade 7, so 78 or below, will be below 10th percentile. So in our example, we had 82 for grade 7. So when I look at 82, 82 is above 79. So that's where I got 10th to 25th percentile. All right, so that's where you get this percentile. When you go to the other example, see where it says 199. So 199, and I have the percentile range being above 90th. So when you go to that, Remember, grade 7, we're still in grade 7. So 199 is above 180, so that's where you see above 90th percentile. Okay? And just be careful because this is grade 7, this is grade 8, this is grade 6, grade 5, and grade 4. So we only do grades 4 through 10 for reading fluency. Now remember, high school, there is no percentile ranges here. So that's why we can't do a overall fluency rating at high school. All right, so there's no percentile rating ranges for high school. All right, so make sure you understand how to complete the Acumenticity scoring. All right, you're going to put all this information in the Google form. So I'm going to show you in a little while where that Google form is, but all this information you're going to put in the Google form. All right, so then you're going to determine the Porosity scoring. All right, you're going to determine the Porosity scoring. All right, so porosity scoring. So when you look up the definition of porosity right here, so porosity is reading with expression. So prosodic reading or reading with expression is widely considered to be one of the hallmarks of achievement of reading fluency. So a student that has high porosity scoring means this, that oral reading sounds much like speech with appropriate phasing, pause structures, stress and rise and fall patterns, and general expressiveness. So when determining porosity scoring, you're going to look at expression and volume. You're going to be looking at phrasing, smoothness, and pace. So those 4 will determine the porosity score. Each of those areas here, expression and volume, phrasing, smoothness, and pace, you're going to score a 1, a 2, or a 3, or a 4. Make sure before you do the first assessment that you read each one of these very carefully. All right, so for each student, you're going to determine the student's expression and volume, a score for expression and volume, a score for phrasing, smoothness, and pace. All right, so in this example, I circled each of those. So for expression and volume, I circled this part here that says reads with volume and expression. However, sometimes the reader slips into expressionless reading and does not sound like they are talking to a friend. So that would be a 3. For phrasing, I circled 3, and it says this: reads with a mixture of run-ons, mid-sentence pauses for breath, and some choppiness. There is reasonable stress and intonation. For smoothness, I circled a 3, reads with occasional breaks in rhythm. The reader has difficulty with specific words and or sentence structures. And then pace, let's say I gave it a 4. A 4 would be reads at a conversational pace throughout the reading. Okay, so once you determine for the student the level of expression and volume, the level of phrasing, the smoothness and pace, you're going to add up the point value for each of those circles. So this is column 3, so this is a 3, this is a score of a 3, this is a score of a 3, and here that's a score of a 4. So when you add up all those points, you get a 13. All right, now, and that's what you would put in the Google form. You would put a 13 for that student's porosity scoring. Notice, though, it says this: scores of 10 or more indicate that the student is making good progress in fluency. Scores below a 10 indicate that the student needs additional instruction in fluency. All right, so that's why it's important that these sheets be printed for each student, so that way when all of this is collected, the teacher, the literacy team, and the literacy coach will have enough documentation to help students that need more help with that have deficiencies in fluency and comprehension. All right, so that is porosity scoring. All right, so now let's talk about overall fluency rating. Remember, high school, you're not going to do this. So don't print this out for high school. You're only going to print overall fluency rating for grades 4 through 8. But here's how you can determine overall fluency rating. So it says this, for overall fluency rating, let me go ahead and expand this a little bit more. Let's see. Oops, too much, I guess. All right, I guess that's fine. All right, overall fluency rating for comprehension, Acumenticity, and Porosity scores captured above. Circle the appropriate box in the table below for each column, and then select the overall fluency rating for the rightmost column, the column here. Okay, so to give us some examples, so let's look at those examples first. So student 1, so it's a grade 4 student with a comprehension score of 4, Acumenticity of 147, which is between the 75th and 90th percentile, and a Porosity score of 13. All right, so disregard those circles for right now because that was used in the example, the examples that you see here. All right, so let's go back and talk about student 1. All right, so student 1 has a comprehension score of 4. All right, so that'll be 3 or higher, right? So that's right here, 3 or higher. An Acumenticity of 147, so that's between 75th and 90th, so that's only this one here. So boom, boom. So top score, well, I wouldn't say top score, top level of the column. And a Porosity score of 13, so that's this one. So notice for student 1, all comprehension, Acumenticity, and Porosity are all at the top level. So that's easy. That's an easy one to choose. It's going to be a 4. Fluent reader who comprehends. Okay, let's go to student 2. Student 2, grade 7 student with a comprehension score of 2. Now, notice there are 2 scores of 2. So it says score of 2 or lower or score of 2, right? All right, so let's just keep in mind that we may use either one of these for right now. Now let's go to the next one. Acumenticity of 120. So according for grade 7, that was between 25th and 50th. So 25th and 50th, that's this one here. Okay? So we have these 2 circled, we have this one circled, and a Porosity score of 9. So that's this one here. All right? So I'm going to go ahead then, and for the comprehension score of 2, I'm going to go ahead and circle this one. So we have this, this, and this. So that's all at the same level, right? All at the same level. So that's going to be a reader who is developing fluency. So that's what you see here. But as you know, they're not all going to be that simple, right? You're going to have some up here, some in the middle, some below. So they're going to be a mixture of all of these levels. All right, so that's what that next note says. So note, students will not always fall neatly into one of the overall fluency ratings. When deciding between 2 ratings for overall fluency, select the less advanced rating to help ensure that the student will receive the most robust set of instructional support and fluency. All right, so let's get an example. So student 3, grade 3 student. Now remember, we don't do grade 3, so keep that in mind. But in this example, it's a grade 3. So grade 3 student with a comprehension score of 2. So let's see, a 2, so that's one of these again, right? An Acumenticity of 90, so that's between 50th and 75. So that's pretty high. So 50th, so that's one of these as well, right? So these two right here, okay? And let's see what else. A Porosity score of 7. Well, that's way down here. So we have these two, and then a 7. All right. Now let's see what else it says. So this student reads relatively rapidly, but is not yet developing, or I'm sorry, not yet demonstrating strong prosody or comprehension. So select the rating. Reader is developing fluency. All right. So remember, that was these two here for Acumenticity, and then the low one. So we're going to choose the one that says reader who is developing fluency. All right. Okay. Now let's go to, now you see I have some things already circled, so that was from these examples that we had. Okay, so let's talk about Acumenticity. So remember, the Acumenticity in our example earlier was above 90th percentile, right? So we go to above 90th percentile. Okay, so that'll be here, one of these two. See that I have these two boxed off? Okay, then we had a prosody of, let's find out a prosody of 13. Okay, so prosody of 13. So that's the one that says 12 or higher. 12 or higher. Okay, so then we can say, well, the student could be a 4 or a 3, right? Depending on the comprehension. So you have to look at the comprehension to determine what the score is. So once you complete this part here for comprehension, whether it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4, then you can determine the overall fluency rating. So if the student gets a 3 or 4, then we're going to say fluent reader who comprehends. If the student gets a 2 or lower, then we're going to say a fluent reader who does not comprehend. Okay, so that is how you're going to determine the overall fluency rating. So just be careful. For a lot of students, it will not fall in a very easy pattern. All right, but remember, when deciding between two ratings for overall fluency, select the less advanced rating to help ensure that the student will receive the most robust set of instructional supporting fluency. Okay, now, once you do all of this, then the question becomes, where do you put the data? All right, so you're going to put the data in a Google form. And the purpose of putting in a Google form is to get all the data across all the schools for each student into one spreadsheet. All right, so let me show you where to find that. So let's go to our Canvas course. So we're going to go to the Canvas course. And in the Canvas course, you're going to go to this part here where it says EBR Reading Fluency Information. So you're going to go here to access the resources needed for the reading fluency information. So click on this, and then it'll bring you to this page. So the data will be collected into grades 4 through 8 data tracker, and then grades 9 through 10 data tracker. So let's talk about grades 4 through 8 first. Okay, so you open it up, and there's the spreadsheet. I don't think I can make this large. I'm trying to figure out how to increase the size of this. Let's see. I don't think I can. Oh, yeah, we can. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom. All right, so let me zoom in. All right, so there's the tracker. Okay, so notice it says ELA Fluency Data Tracker, grades 4 through 8, fall 2022. All right, so it's going to list your email address will be listed here. Mine's listed there, but yours will be listed. And then you're gonna indicate the name of the person, enter the data, so it's probably that name here. So you're gonna do your first and last name. You're gonna indicate the student's first name, so anything with an asterisk is required. So the student's first name, the student's last name, then you're gonna choose a grade level of the student, so that's a drop down. So notice 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. High school, remember high school is a different Google form. Then you're going to, let me go ahead and do one. So let's say 4. So then you're going to do the student's local ID, not LACID. So remember, if a student comes to your school and doesn't have a LACID, then you can't put a number there if I said you must use a LACID, right? So if a student's coming from a private school, it takes a while for the student to get a LACID. So but the student gets a local ID very quickly. So you're going to put the student's local ID. And that's the only reason is because not all students that come from a private school or home school gets a LACID right away. So just use the student's local ID. Then you're going to name the name of the school. So it's your drop down. So you're going to find your school. Okay, you're going to find your school. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to indicate the total words the student read correctly. So remember, to do that, you're going to go to the, let me go to it. You're going to go to, the part where it says Acumenticity. So the part that says Acumenticity, that's where you're going to get the number of words a student read correctly. So this part here, the Acumenticity scoring, you're going to use with this part, total words student read correctly, then the number of seconds a student read, right? So that's part of that Acumenticity, and then you're going to determine the Acumenticity. All right, so remember, so the first three come from here, 340, 7, 333, and then the Acumenticity 199. So you'd put whatever that Acumenticity is. Now, right here, I hyperlinked that, this right here, I hyperlinked it to this page here. So if you need to look at that page again, it was hyperlinked to that, okay? All right, so let me go back to the Google form. All right, and it looks like I already put some examples in here. Let me go back. Let's see. Well, that's fine. Let's continue on. All right, so then you're going to determine the student's percentile. And then it's a drop-down menu, so you're going to pick one of those. So above 90th, 75th to 90th, 50th, 75th, and so on. Now remember how you found that? You found that by going, when you did the Acumenticity, by going to this link right here and indicating what the percentile was. Okay, so this part here. And then you're going to put that information here. All right. Then the student's comprehension score. So the student's comprehension score, whether it's a 1, 2, 3, 4. So remember, that was this part here. I kind of show you quickly. So that's this. So remember the comprehension score. Once a student reads the passage again, the second time, either out loud or silently, you're going to ask these questions, and they're going to determine the comprehension rating for that student. And that's going to go here. I also have it hyperlinked, so if you need to look at it again, it is here. Okay. Then you're going to do the student's Porosity Score. So remember the Porosity Score. Let me show you again where that's at. So that is this part here. Okay. And that says right here, Porosity Scoring, circle the appropriate rating for each row in the Rosinsky rubric below in total points. All right, so we talked about that. You're going to circle it. Remember, make sure you have one for each student. That's going to be important when determining the best way to support students that have deficiencies. All right, and they're going to put that score. See, that's a 13 here. So you're going to go here. And it's a drop-down menu, so you're going to pick the score that's appropriate. Okay, all the way from 1 to 16. And then you're going to determine the overall fluency rating. So we talked about that, and I have it hyperlinked. There you go, right here. And you're going to determine whether the student's a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. Okay, and then any notes. So now the notes is optional. Everything else had a red asterisk, so those were required. So any notes that you think might be useful for the literacy team, the literacy coach, or the teacher of that student, that may help them to determine how to best support that student. So useful to record patterns and miscues, such as didn't know the PH sound, stumbled over most long words, or about the student was nervous about reading aloud. And then you're going to submit. Notice a copy will be sent to your email address, the person completing the form, or the person completing the form on the. So remember, when you complete the form, it's a Google form, so you have to sign into Google. So whoever signs into Google with their email address, that person will get the responses, and then you submit. All right, and you do the next one. So that is grades 4 through 8. All right, now let's look at the high school one. So grades 9 through 10. So everything is the same, except you will notice there is no percentile ranges here, and there is no overall fluency. So you have everything else to do except there's no percentile range question and there's no overall fluency determination. And then you do the same thing. So you do all of this and then you submit. Okay? All right, and that is it. So that is how you're going to complete the Google Forms and how you're going to complete the sheets this year for each student. All right, so if you have any questions, make sure you email me or call me. You can call me. You can also call members of the literacy department with questions on this part here. So if you're not sure, when doing the overall fluency rating for grades 4 through 8, whether the student is a overall fluency is a 4, 3, 2, 1 based on what you've collected, you can ask your literacy coach, or you can contact someone in the literacy department. All right, so that will conclude, I believe, I've covered it all. That will conclude the reading fluency implementation for this coming school year.